Welcome all. Thank you for joining us for this afternoon's Common Hour celebration of Women's History Month. I'm Dr. Chioma Ugochukwu, the Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs here at Cabrini University. We just celebrated International Women's Day on Monday. This week also happens to be Catholic Sisters Week. So how serendipitous for the conversation we are about to have this afternoon. As we honor women all over the world, we thought that it would be important to also celebrate the women of Cabrini University, including St. Francis Xavier Cabrini, the founder of our sponsoring order, the Missionary Sisters of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, as well as other women leaders, some of whom you may have heard of and know well, and others that you may know, but perhaps not as well. And we have just the right panelists for you. As we move along, please feel free to submit questions through the chat feature. Dr. Beverly Bride, the Dean of the School of Education, will collate all the questions and ask them during the Q&A session. So joining us this afternoon are Sister Christine Marie Baltas, who is a missionary sister of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. She hails from New York, where she attended Cabrini High School in Manhattan. She received the Bachelor of Science in Education from then Cabrini College and a Master of Science in Education from Fordham University. She taught in elementary and high schools for many years before becoming an elementary school principal at St. Donato School in Philadelphia. She served as Dean of Students at Cabrini, the Director of Immigrant Services in Dobbs Ferry, New York, before coming back to Cabrini, where she has been a campus ministry associate for the last 13 years. Next, we have Nancy Garvin Costello, a proud Cabrini University alumna. She currently serves as the Director of Communications for the Missionary Sisters of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And previously, she worked as a National Director of Mission Integration for the Sisters. Nancy holds a master's degree in education from Westchester University and a master's degree in pastoral care and counseling from Newman University. She has served a total of, count this, 14 years as a board member on the Cabrini University Board of Trustees, and is a past president of the Cabrini University Alumni Association. She's a co-founder of the Joy of Socks, a nonprofit which provides socks for those experiencing homelessness. This organization recently celebrated its 10th year. Nancy is married, the mother of 2 adult children, and the grandmother of 7. Welcome, Nancy.
Thank you, Chioma.
Next, we have Dr. Michelle Phelan Brown, the Dean of the School of Humanities and Social Sciences and Professor of English. She was recently awarded her 3rd grant from the Catherine Alexandra Foundation to support her work on body image. Michelle started the Gender and Body Studies program at Cabrini University. She has published scholarship related to race, beauty, culture, and women's history. She hosts the National Undergraduate Conference on Body Image at Cabrini and is the founding editor of the Body Studies Journal. Hi, Michelle.
Hi.
Last but not least, we have Vanessa Evers, who received a Master of Fine Arts in Creative Writing from Sarah Lawrence College and a Master of Science in Library and Information Science with a minor in Museum Leadership from Drexel University. Vanessa has taught at community colleges and an HBCU, passionate and dedicated to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Vanessa writes poetry with the importance of intersectionality in mind. She explores topics such as the experience of being a Black woman, sexual orientation and gender identity, and religion. Aside from her creative writing and role as a librarian, Vanessa enjoys making jewelry and miniature greeting cards. I'll be calling you for some of those. All right, let's jump right into it. Nancy, my first question is for you. I've always been fascinated by Catholic sisters who are members of different orders, such as the Missionary Sisters of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, the School Sisters of Notre Dame, and the Sisters of Mercy. These are innovative and indefatigable women. I've been in awe of them, as I'm sure many people are as well. They are visionaries, educators, and business women. To what would you attribute their successes in endeavors that most of us will find daunting, such as founding schools, hospitals, and colleges?
Well, I believe that the women religious really have always been on the forefront of determining needs in the population. They are very visionary, as you've mentioned, Chioma. They have an ability to see where the needs are greatest. And I count among them, of course, Mother Cabrini. Many religious orders were founded in the early 1880s, mid 1880s, and Mother Cabrini too got her start at a time when many women were relegated to home and hearth. They didn't have the educational opportunities that the bulk of women of that day really had. And when you think about Cabrini particularly, here's a woman of frail health, first trained as an educator, and then at the age of 30, she was founding a missionary order, which was absolutely unheard of. Women were religious, but Mother Cabrini took that a step further, and she started her own order of missionary women. She, as you have indicated, was visionary. She's bold and risk-taking. And everything that Cabrini undertook, she demonstrated what we can describe as servant leadership. It's the idea that an individual can improve a situation by consistently putting aside her own self-interest for the betterment of others. And I'm sure we find that concept refreshing. A servant leader is someone who is empathic and nurturing, but at the same time, demanding in a very benevolent way. I think the missionary sisters can concur with that. Cabrini really always demanded excellence in everything. A servant leader is driven internally, as was Mother Cabrini. Everything she did was for the love of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. That's what impelled her to take from scripture the line, I can do all things in Christ who strengthens me. This truly was her motivating force. And the Cabrinian scholar, Dr. Maria Williams, who actually did much of her research here on campus in the Cabrini Honor Room, likens Mother Cabrini and the founder sisters of the 19th century in some ways like modern CEOs of multinational corporations. When you think about it, Cabrini established 67 institutions in 9 countries between the years of 1880 and 1917. And this is without air travel. It's without a phone, really. No email, and certainly no Zoom. So when you think about what determination and energy that took for her to do what she did, Cabrini, like many of the innovative women of religious of her time, she managed a vast portfolio of properties, and she employed a raft of male attorneys to help her on her contracts. And also, as you mentioned earlier, Cabrini was a very savvy businesswoman. She believed that to advance her ability to secure property, enhance her business ventures, and further advance her missionary endeavors, she became a naturalized citizen of the United States because she knew that this would enable her to transact business with greater ease and facility. And I often chuckle because they talk about Cabrini engaging with business leaders and bankers, and it's said that while the men were still hanging up their hat and coat, Mother Cabrini was seated at the table, ready to go. So, yeah. So very quickly, just to say, her leadership style, she was tenacious, and at the same time, she was, of course, an immigrant, and she fought gender, cultural, stereotypical, religious, and socioeconomic barriers to go on to found schools, orphanages, and later on in her life, hospitals. And she was
amazing.
It
I
really
don't know
is.
how she did all of that, but I am in awe. That's just amazing.
Yeah.
So we are going to talk about another amazing woman. Sister Christine, this question is for you. Mother Ursula Infante, she was a woman ahead of her time. We heard that she had been turned away by Archbishop John Cardinal O'Hara when she petitioned for the establishment of what is now Cabrini University, because the Archbishop did not see the need for yet another Catholic institution in the area. So Mother Ursula did her homework and met with the presidents of surrounding colleges who showed no objection to the establishment of another institution in the region. That's the true definition of resourcefulness. And it seems that the MSCs have that in their DNA. What do you believe is the source of such foresight, courage, and resourcefulness?
Well, to echo a quote that Nancy gave us, I can do all things in Christ who strengthens me. That was the quote that Mother Cabrini adopted as her motto from St. Paul. And Mother Ursula certainly walked in the same footsteps. She was a woman also ahead of her time. When she was a teacher, she was an educator, she was a high school principal, and she was a woman who, when she set her mind to something, she would do it. I like to think of her as somebody who had an I can do that attitude. And that goes back to the earliest time in her life, when she was 14 years old. She got herself on a subway because she heard Mother Cabrini was in Manhattan and she lived in Brooklyn. And she wanted to go and meet Mother Cabrini. At the age of 14, all by herself, she went up and she met Mother Cabrini, and that's when her religious vocation began to unfold. Mother Cabrini told her she would have to wait because she wanted to become a sister right away at 14. Mother Cabrini said, no, you have to wait until you're 18. And so she did that. And then when that time came, much to her parents' shock, she disappeared out of the house one morning. They thought she was going to work, where she worked in a detective agency. But instead, she took herself up to Mother Cabrini to enter the community. And that day, Mother Cabrini herself dressed Sister Ursula, she became known as Mother Ursula, in a religious habit. And her joy was unbounded. The story goes on where she went to school, she studied pharmacy at Fordham University. And that was rather unheard of in those days because that was a man's world, yet her can-do attitude and spirit said, I can do this. And she went on and got her degree in pharmacology, followed by other degrees, followed by her experience as an elementary school teacher and a high school teacher and principal. And then in 1954, she was charged with founding a college, buying property to start a college. And Chioma made reference to this before. And against obstacles, Chioma mentioned the Archbishop who was against it, the fact that there were several other women's colleges in the area and they may not have wanted this, but she also had to buck Radnor Township, which was zoned to be primarily residential. But somehow through her spirit of determination, her ability to persuade people, she was able to purchase the Dorrance estate. It was owned by the Dorrance family, who were the owners of the Campbell Soup Company. And in 1954, the land was purchased. When Mother Ursula, saw it, she said, I knew that this was it. This would be the ideal place. And that's why we are so fortunate to be here today.
Wow. We need to bottle all of this courage and figure out a way how to make sure that everybody has a piece of it. That's just really wonderful. So Michelle, you've worked at Cabrini for a few years now. What have been your experiences so far with regards to leadership at Cabrini?
Well, it's funny talking about bottling up that leadership and that inspiration from the women who led us here. I really see that all across campus. I think sometimes when we think about leaders, we only think about presidents and vice presidents, but the reality is we have leaders everywhere on this campus. And I especially look to our students and think about how our students grow over their time at Cabrini University. I believe that leaders are born here and they grow here. And I've worked here for 13 years. And so I've had the privilege of witnessing students like Jackie Marciano, who was president of the dance team when she was a student here. At that time, I advised the dance team. I got to watch her grow as a leader. And now today she works at Cabrini University. And so I love being able to see that growth of young women who are inspired by Mother Cabrini and who have really cultivated their leadership skills as students here and beyond into their careers.
Wonderful. I'm glad you did that. We need to talk about our students as well. All right, Vanessa, in the short period that you have served as Cabrini's archives librarian, you've engaged in some interesting archival work. Could you tell us a little bit about those efforts?
Yes, as a Black woman, anytime I enter the archives, I'm always looking for different groups of people, a diverse group. And so I was really excited that my first task was to digitize the Woodcrest yearbooks. And so these next two images are images from the first one to the left is from the 1961 yearbook. This is a dedication page to Mother Ursula. And the picture to the right, maybe you guys might recognize this, is Dr. Shirley Dixon, her senior year picture, who went on to receive 3 degrees here at Cabrini. And so it's important for me to be able to show different groups of people in the archives and also to show the diversity initiatives at Cabrini. And so some of the efforts that I have been able to do here is by making a new book display that's featured in the library that shows women in science, which also is going to show Dr. Antoinette Schiesler. And also I've been able to do research for an upcoming panel that I'll be talking about, DEI in academic libraries for TCLC. And so just being able to show the different diversity that happens here at the university and making sure that I'm showing the underrepresented voices through the archival materials.
Love it. Thank you so much for all that work. Next, Nancy, I want to move us to the Catholic social teaching. This is Cabrini, after all. This is a Catholic institution. So some of the principles of the Catholic social teaching include solidarity, option for the poor and vulnerable, rights and responsibilities, etc. How can we apply these principles in our daily expressions of leadership here at Cabrini and perhaps beyond?
Oh, certainly. And I believe that the Catholic social teaching undergirds everything we are as a Catholic university. And I think that that was certainly a motivating force when the Justice Matters curriculum came into being several years ago. No matter what the discipline our students might be studying, still those values, those guiding Catholic social teachings were underpinning all that aspect. And what has always impressed me throughout being an alum and also sitting on the board and being on campus each day is to note how no matter what course of study our students are taking, that woven in that are all the principles of solidarity, of care for the poor, that when you receive your degree and you go out into the world, you're looking at the world and your future experiences through that lens. It's so much a part of the fabric of the education that we provide, that you go out with an awareness of those on the margins of society. And that touches everything that we do. We're talking about leadership today. Well, that too is such an integral part of how we form leaders here. And as Michelle was saying a little earlier, there is such growth that you witness when our students arrive as freshmen. Over the years, you get to see how our students really grow in their understanding of the world beyond, and how through their education and that mindfulness of social justice can impact those they serve immediately and the community beyond. Excellent. I think it's our special hallmark here at Cabrini.
Absolutely, and that's something I love about Cabrini.
I do too.
Yes. Sister Christine, okay, I'm going to make you blush a little bit here. You are a legend at Cabrini, and among the students who were here when you served as the Dean of Students. So take us down memory lane. What were some of your fond memories of those days and perhaps the challenges you faced? What are some of the notable differences between then and now?
I have many, many fond memories. They were great years. As you said, there were challenges. But the fondest memory I have, I think, was when I would be interacting with students. I usually had a lot of fun with them. I engaged with them in different activities. At that time, when we had a heavy snowfall, they didn't go sleighing, they went traying with cafeteria trays. And I did that with them, and I had a lot of fun at it. However, it wasn't all fun and games because there were challenging times. When somebody was caught dealing drugs in the dorm, and I had to deal with that. Not an easy situation to deal with. Some of them that were matters of discipline were also kind of funny when I look back how they turned out. I really think that the Holy Spirit was at my side in those moments to guide me and to tell me what to do, because I really wouldn't have known otherwise. But I think that the best part was the people that I worked with, the people that made up the student services team at that time. And we still talk about the good old days. I see there have been many, many changes and many positive changes. The growth and the development of the campus, many new programs, issuing master's degrees and doctoral degrees. As far as the students and the difference, I don't get to know the students like I used to. I used to know all of them, and I guess because of the role I had at that time, they knew who I was too, for better or for worse. But now I wish I did get to know more of them, but I don't. I try my best, but it's still wonderful being here, and I can't think of any place I would rather be.
Excellent. Thank you so much for taking us down memory lane. All right, Michelle, I'm going to get some statistics here for you and ask a question. According to data collated by the Center for American Progress, women earn more than 57% of undergraduate degrees and 59% of all master's degrees. Women in the legal profession are 45% of associates, but only 22.7% of partners and 19% of equity partners. In medicine, women represent 40% of all physicians and surgeons, but only 16% of permanent medical school deans. In academia, where we are, women have earned the majority of doctorates for 8 consecutive years, but are only 32% of full professors and 30% of college presidents. What do you see as some of the reasons for this? How do we ensure that as educators, we are empowering our female students to understand that they too can be leaders? What should the mentoring of our female students look like?
This is a big question, and there are a lot of layers to that. The first thing I'd like to acknowledge is, as we hear those statistics for women, to look at it through an intersectional lens and to realize that those statistics are probably even more dramatic when we look at women of color, low-income women, first-generation women. So I think it's really important to be mindful as we have these conversations, as we're trying to deconstruct systemic biases against women, that we want to make sure that we're not perpetuating some of the same structures of power and biases that only promote white women into some of these positions of power. So I want to acknowledge that before I tackle this large question. And I think a big part of it has been revealed through the pandemic. We see the media covering how much women are struggling because we're being asked to really take on so much. Women, despite sort of, progress that we may have achieved, we're trying to work in the workplace, and yet on the home front, someone who's my age, I'm 40, so women who are in their 40s and 50s are sandwiched where, you know, we're taking care of our children, taking care of the home, and then also maybe also taking care of elderly parents. And so there are a lot of pressures on us that the pandemic has certainly revealed. And I think the important thing to educate our young women is the myth that we can do it all, because it's really, really challenging. And you start to feel really lonely if you're the only woman at the board table, and then you feel as though you're not doing enough, both on the home front and at the workplace. So to realize that we need to ask for help, we need to bring men into the conversation so that men know all of the wonderful ways that they can be supportive of women in the workplace, and to be aware of biases, both conscious and unconscious, against women, that many of the qualities that we associate with leadership, being assertive, having a voice, being strong, that a lot of times when those qualities come from a woman, that sometimes it's perceived as being bossy or being too aggressive, and that we want to really promote women in those ways. And I just saw an article actually this morning that was published. It was talking about the pandemic and the challenge that because so many men are at these elevated positions, that they're creating policies that then are impacting women. And how would those policies perhaps be different if more women were at the table? So I think as I'm, you know, mentoring young women, it's educating them to have mentors in their life. You know, always think about who's at their board table, as Brene Brown has said, to be thinking about, you know, establishing mentors, establishing goals, and to be allies to other women, right? We want to lift each other up so that when we are sitting at that board table, that there are other women at the table, and that we can be each other's source of strength instead of a source of competition.
Excellent. Love it. Thank you. That's really something for all of us to be mindful of. Vanessa, in your work, you reveal something that many of us did not know. I was shocked. I believe Michelle was the first person who told me about this work that you did. You revealed something about Sister Mary Antoinette. So she's called Toni Rodez Sisler. She was a dean of academic affairs here in the 90s. And I have to also acknowledge her husband, Reverend Robert Sisler, who is also joining us here this afternoon, and it's been wonderful to Cabrini University as well. Could you tell us what you found out?
Yes, well, the discovery or the unearthing of this history, I mean, I'm going through and scanning every page of the yearbook, and I wasn't shocked that I did not see a lot of Black folks in the yearbooks until the late 60s, early 70s. And as I'm kind of flipping through the pages, I see this woman in the 1989 yearbook, and I start researching her. This is a picture of her first year at Cabrini as the academic dean in 1989. And I go to the Cabrini website and I don't see a whole bunch of information about her. I do see that there's an endowed scholarship that was set in place by her husband, family, and friends. But I wanted to know more information about her. And so what do you do when you want to know more information about somebody is you go to the archives. And when I went into the archives, of course, I saw that she was here from 1989 to 1993. She did pass away in 96 due to a brain tumor. And the work that she did when she was here, she was really heavily involved in a lot of racial incidents, kind of the person that the students were able to really look up to during these times of racial turmoil that was happening at the university. And she was somebody, as a Black woman, that was able to kind of step in and help students have conversations. A lot of diversity initiatives came out of the time that she was here in the late 80s, early 90s. Also, I think that she did serve as a nun for 17 years, but she did leave that life, and she went into a professional career, and she did serve as a Episcopal Diocese of Delaware in 1994, and she served there until 2 years until she passed away. there's not a lot of research that's done on her, and I am planning on continuing to do some research. I believe that based on my research in the yearbooks and in the archives, I believe she was the first African-American dean at the university. And I'm continuing to dig up some work. She also led a women's spirituality group when she served here for 4 years. And so just the information that I'm finding about her is really exciting. And I'll be sharing more information about her and other hidden figures in my blog for the university archives.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that information. All right, let's go back to Mother Cabrini, Nancy. I know she was a mentor, and some people will be surprised by one of the people that she sort of mentored, who was also a saint. Could you talk about Mother Cabrini as a mentor?
Yes, Mother Cabrini, well, she was a trained teacher, so I think inherent in that is that sense of mentorship. But what people might find interesting is that she also had a relationship with Saint Catherine Drexel, Mother Catherine Drexel, who is another well-known Philadelphia area saint, and of course now universal. But again, just to show how independent a thinker Mother Cabrini was, the sisters have to make up their rule or their constitution. And generally, years ago, the rule was helped to be constructed by a priest, a man. And Mother Cabrini, she said, no, I can make up my own rule. And she brought that to the Vatican to be approved. Similarly, Mother Cabrini would come to visit the Philadelphia area. And when she did, she became friends with then Mother Catherine Drexel, who at that time was starting to construct her rule for her Sisters of the Blessed Sacrament, her order. And Cabrini, being very practical and pragmatic, Mother Catherine was going to wait in Philadelphia till the rule was sent to the Vatican. And Cabrini said, oh, no, no, no. You've got to go to Rome, because if you don't sit there, the men are just going to put all their other business ahead of what you need to have done. She advised her to go to Rome, which Catherine Drexel did do, and stay there until the Vatican approved her rule, her constitution. So I think that's such an insightful glimpse at who Cabrini was and her incentive, and yet her benevolence in instructing someone else. And just somewhat parenthetically, the Sisters of the Blessed Sacrament had their property in Bensalem, Pennsylvania. And I was fortunate enough to have the privilege to go to visit the sisters there. And I actually was able to sit on the couch, the settee, where Catherine Drexel sat with Mother Cabrini as she's explaining to her what she needs to do. It was a thrill of a lifetime to be able to do that. So you can just see Mother Cabrini was always trying to, and I would say this also, her spirit carried over to Mother Ursula and to all the missionary sisters, because as a student here in the late 1960s, early 70s, that was the first time I really felt a voice. I was given a voice through the encouragement of the missionary sisters through their mentorship, to speak up as a woman, as someone who had something important to say, and to make that happen.
Oh my goodness, I love this. Can you imagine having a voice? We always say this, having a voice matters, and we have to encourage people to have a voice and help them. I'm so impressed by these women. And can you imagine living in those days and trying to support one another? I think that there's a lesson there for all of us.
Clearly.
All right, Michelle, what do you see as the legacy of Cabrini's women leaders, past and present? What's the impact of their legacy on you personally, and perhaps all the budding women leaders here at Cabrini?
Well, it's just that spirit of Mother Cabrini that Nancy was just talking about that I think becomes instilled in all of us, whether you're a student here or you are an employee here, to be so inspired by Mother Cabrini, who never took no as an answer and moved passionately and swiftly towards her goals, who really promoted education for women. And to come to an institution, representation is so important. We talk about that when we look at Kamala Harris, right? That to be able to see someone in a position of leadership, then we are able to dream and aspire to that. To come to Cabrini for myself, at a young age in my career, to see an institution where all of the presidents at that time had all been women, right? And to think for myself, growing up, most of my bosses had always been men. Most of my leaders had been men. So to come here and see that women in leadership, that women were valued in leadership, and to see that continue, to have you, Dr. Ugochukwu, as my boss and mentor, to have, a woman of color, an immigrant from Nigeria, to be my boss is important. Important to me, and I think it's important to the women of this campus to see that we value women in leadership here at Cabrini University.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. So in the interest of time, I'm going to ask my last question so that we'll offer our guests the opportunity to also ask questions. As we continue to celebrate Women's History Month, I think it's important to ask you to help us understand maybe one or two things you've learned about leadership over the years, and to tell us what is missing, if anything, in our understanding of leadership. How can we instill that concept of ethical and authentic leadership, and also servant leadership, which Nancy talked about? How do we make sure that we instill that concept in all of us? What should we be doing to encourage and support women leaders? And anyone can start.
I mean, I'll say that I think it's important that we are being interested in other groups of people. I think it's always about diversity at the core of where, in my opinion, leadership can really come from, is being interested in people that don't always look like you, realizing that other people bring really exciting things to projects. And you should never feel comfortable sitting at a table with all people that look like you. It's really important to make sure that you're sitting, if we keep with this analogy of the table, it's really important to make sure that you're sitting at the table with people that don't look like you and some people that do look like you, so we can have a really interesting conversation way forward.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you so much.
I totally agree with that, Vanessa. I would add to those sentiments to say that I think strong leadership comes from a place of empathy. Like I was saying before about when your plate is full, that it's okay to ask for help, that great leaders ask for help, and that also great leaders ask others, how can I help you? How can I help? How can I, that servant leadership, how can I roll up my sleeves and work alongside you, and be that model of being a team member and being collaborative. And I think that great leaders always lift up their team and celebrate their team's accomplishments.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Nancy?
Yeah, I have to keep going back to my formative years here. It was the time, if you recall your history, of the Vietnam War. And it was the time when there were sit-ins at major universities. And so Cabrini, too, encouraged us to think about those policies, those aspects of campus life that we felt could use revision, could require conversations. And I was active in student government. And I'll never forget, it was Sister Barbara Leonardo, who was an acting president at that time, who invited those of us in student government to come up to her office in the mansion. That alone was so affirming of us. We felt as if we were being recognized for emerging women leaders, to sit down and have a roundtable conversation here. And I can't stress enough how future thinking the MSCs were. They really were the embodiment of Mother Cabrini. They took her can-do, risk-taking attitude, Barbara Leonardo particularly would always ask us to question why. If you want to do this, then why? And then what are the outcomes of that? She had you thinking beyond the immediate into the future. And then when Sister Regina Casey came, as Michelle is saying, we've always had women presidents here. Regina Casey too, in her own very quiet style, forged a path of leadership for us, never letting us take a second seat. You have a voice, you speak out. And I really owe so much to the MSCs and many religious women who have touched my life in saying that you go for the gusto, as you would say in today's parlance. So really, we never were told that you take a back seat. You are bright, you are educated, you go out and change the world.
Amen to that. Go out and change the world. Sister Christine.
Well, I think a good leader is somebody who, while the work that they have to do may be serious, I think a good leader has to learn not to take themselves too seriously, to believe in what they're aiming at, but to most of all be a good listener. Learn how to listen to other people, because people have so many wonderful contributions to make, things that the leader may not have thought of. And it might be an aha moment where they say, oh, I never thought of that. That's a great idea. So that, and, and just kind of be able to relax, be able to be part of the team, be able to enjoy things with them, to relax, to have fun, to know how to do that, and yet to still accomplish the goals that you have set or that have been set for you. So that's what I can think of.
Thank you. That is wonderful. All right, so we're going to go over to Dr. Bride. Do we have questions from our participants?
Yes, we do. We have a couple that are in the chat. So the first one is for everyone on the panel. And the question is, do you believe women lead differently or uniquely? Do you believe women lead differently or uniquely? And if yes, how so?
I'll just hook on what Sister Christine Marie said. I think women are very, very mindful of one another. They tend to build community. They like to bring people into the conversation. And I think women are always about an esprit de corps. They want to pull and magnify the strengths of others and listen, really, as Sister Christine Marie has said, to what the other has to say, to find the value and then share those ideas and move them forward together.
Does anyone else want to? Yes, go ahead, Michelle.
I would say, to echo what Vanessa said in our last question, is that we all lead differently, right? We're all unique and we're all diverse. And I think it's important to celebrate each other's strengths and unique leadership styles, to realize that we're all human. We're all going to make mistakes as leaders, and that's okay. We can own our mistakes, and to learn from watching other leaders and the unique skill sets that we each bring to the table, and learn from each other's mistakes and learn and celebrate each other's successes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. All right. Bev, any other question?
Yes, this question is for Vanessa. And Vanessa, this question came before you talked a little bit more specifically about Dr. Schistler. But this question was, what may have been a challenge or two that Dean Schistler would have faced in her era at Cabrini? I think you touched on some of this, but was there anything else that you wanted to add as to some challenges she might have faced during her time at Cabrini?
I mean, like a lot of universities in the area, I think that universities were having a hard time with being equal to students of color. A lot of students of color had difficult times just period. During this time, 60s, 70s, looking at Civil Rights Act being like looking at all of the things that were taking place, this is a really difficult time. So when she started in 1989, there'd been several really horrible things that happened to Black students on campus. And so in 1990, I have a picture of her in the yearbook where she's in a sit-in in the president's office supporting other students. There was a proposal written, a group called CARET, and I have it over here, but a group of students that were concerned about ethnic intimidation that was happening on campus. That group started in the time that she was here. And so she was really able to support students, particularly in this situation, Black students that didn't feel like they were being heard. So she kind of came in and helped in these different ways. And so really difficult time, I think, in her 4 years that she was here. Very short. She did retire after this position. But in the very short time that she was here, there was a lot of really difficult times and fun times as well, but really difficult times that she had to endure and help support.
If I might interject, I was not fortunate enough to be here when Toni Chisler was here, but I can only tell you that I do know a lot of people who were, and I have, over the years, I have only heard wonderful things about her. I'm sorry I never got to know her, because she was a much loved, much respected and revered woman certainly among her peers on the faculty.
I really appreciate that. All right, I think we're almost at time, so I think maybe we should end here. But before we do that, we put some non-alcoholic drinks by your seats. So I want to make sure everyone knows it's non-alcoholic. It's now time for us to raise our glasses in appreciation and honor of Mother Cabrini, Mother Ursula, and all the strong women in our lives. This is to all the women leaders who paved the way and those who are yet to come. We salute the women leaders with visibility, as well as those who are in the trenches, working quietly and with dignity every day. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers, everyone. All right. I really appreciate the time. Thank you all for being here for our Common Hour, and thank you to all the panelists. Excellent job. Really appreciate it. Thank you. And
Thank you.
bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.